This is the third part of a 5-part series on the economic analysis of beer and on the rise of the microbrew. We've been analyzing these market dynamics using KNIME. We've been simulating the markets using the new market simulation nodes by scientific strategy. So this third phase is the growth and consolidation phase in the beer industry. And as we analyze the economics of this phase, we find that new technology brings about vertical differentiation. That's a new type of product differentiation that helps these products compete. We'll be analyzing the nature of this vertical differentiation, explaining and showing how this works in a third KNIME workflow. But this third phase, the growth and consolidation phase, really looks like this, where we see factories scaling up to be large bottling plants. We see national per capita beer consumption increasing 6-fold from the end of the Civil War, and we see market shares of the larger breweries increasing rapidly. So the question is, how did all this scale drive customer demand? Well, looking back across this timeline, you'll remember in phase one was all about the geographic advantage or the geographic differentiation that products had over their competitors. Essentially, each brewery had a local monopoly over the customers that lived around that brewery. In part two, that geographic advantage was eliminated with rail and insulated boxcars, and the number of breweries started to decline. Now, when you step back, you'll realize that when we eliminate geographic differentiation, the products again become commodities, right? There's nothing differentiating these products. The beer that was brewed locally in your own town was pretty much the same as the beer they brewed in the next town and the next county across the state. So all these beers started flooding the market. They all looked pretty much the same. There was no branding, no marketing. There was nothing really differentiating these products. So there was tremendous cost pressure and price pressure. When prices go down, the demand for the beer explodes, and that's where we see that 6-fold consumption increase per capita. So this is our third phase. The growth and consolidation phase really happens over this period. This covers Prohibition, but you'll remember that Prohibition was really irrelevant to the economics of the industry. Now let's look at differentiation and vertical differentiation, and now we're plotting willingness to pay. Now you'll remember again in part one, part two, we plotted willingness to pay using linear charts because a geographic differentiation could be modeled using a linear curve. But for products in general, and the perception of how customers felt about that product, it really falls on more a normal distribution. So we have all our customers here, customer A, customer B, customer C. We have 26 customers here, and they can all be plotted in this histogram, where some customers, like customer A, really hate the product. Other customers, like customer Z, love the product, but most customers fall somewhere in the middle, as this normal distribution illustrates. So we have product number one here, and we're asking what would happen if the quality improved, specifically the quality of a competitive product. So a second product in the market now introduces this new technology, this pasteurization technology, this refrigeration technology. It improves the quality of the product, of the beer. What happens to that value curve, the willingness to pay curve from above? What happens is all the customers in the market will shift their valuation to the right. They all perceive the willingness or the value of the second product. They all have a willingness to pay for the second product that's higher than the first product, right? It's objectively a better product. The product is cleaner, more stable, tastes better, looks clearer, It's a better product. So customer Z thinks product 2 is better than product 1. Customer A thinks product 2 is better than product 1. Everybody thinks it is. So what market share would you expect if these two competitors were competing in the market? Well, in fact, 100% of customers would buy product number 2, assuming that the prices were comparable. Now, this is the nature of vertical differentiation. Vertical differentiation means that all customers agree. And vertical differentiation mathematically is defined as the mean of the two curves. So imagine the mean of product 1 compared with the mean of product 2. The mean for product 2 is bigger than product 1. We have a third KNIME workflow illustrating this market dynamic. As before, if you want to download this KNIME workflow and use it offline in your own KNIME Analytics platform, you can do so by following the download link. When we switch to KNIME, we can simulate this growth and consolidation phase with actually what is a very simple workflow. The nodes that we used from part 2 are pretty much the same as the ones we use here. We have customer distribution nodes as before. We have a product generator node as before and a simulate market node as before. And we're creating a loop. So very, very similar. We start again like we did, looking at the product definitions. And we can see again we have two products. They're both beer products and they both depend on the commodity of beer. Now, in the past, these products were differentiated with geographic differentiation, which we saw was eliminated in part 2. So now, product 2 and product 1 neither have any geographic differentiation, but product 1 has added this new technology. It is now offering pasteurization as well. Now, the price of these products are the same as before. Beer 1 is more expensive, beer 2 is the cheaper, and the cost of providing the commodity beer product is the same, but this cell here hasn't been filled out. The cost of providing pasteurization can optionally be added in later, and that's essentially what we're going to do. In this market simulation, what we're going to do is introduce pasteurization. Customers are going to immediately see the value of that pasteurization. They're going to see that vertical differentiation. But then we're going to drive down the cost of pasteurization over time, and we're going to see how that impacts profitability. So starting as before, we have beer, which is, there's 10,000 customers in the market. This is a random normal distribution with a mean of $2, willingness to pay of $2, and a standard deviation of 0.2, exactly as before. Pasteurization adds another dimension here. We also say it's normally distributed, so some customers will really appreciate the extra value that pasteurization provides, but there's going to be a range. We've got a standard deviation of 0.2 here, so some customers are going to really like this. Other customers are going to be very indifferent, and they're going to not see any advantage in having pasteurized beer at all. The cost here, before we were using a customer distribution in an unusual way. We were adding a maximum loss value due to the distance that these customers would have to walk. So that was a value that the customers would suffer. In this case, the cost value is the cost of pasteurization. So this cost is going to be applied to the cost of the product itself, the cost of manufacturing. And we've got 21 periods, 21 iterations, where the cost is going to be driven down from 0.7 down to, that's $0.7 down to just 10 cents. We add this constant value. So the cost of adding the feature pasteurization in the first iteration is 0.7. The cost of adding pasteurization is in the next iteration is 67 cents, and then it just goes down and down until it eventually is just 10 cents. Now all this gets rolled into the product generator node as before. Really the only difference in this workflow is that we're now using this optional middle port here. We're applying this this cost of pasteurization, and we're using that. That's an optional feature attribute input, and essentially what that's doing is filling in this cell here. So when we run this, let's reset this so we can start again. When we run this one time, we can see that product 1, the price is 1.2, but the cost is also 1.2. So we've added the cost of pasteurization. When we look at the willingness to pay matrix, we can see the difference here. So product 1, customers universally think the product 1 is more than product 2 because we've added pasteurization. So product 1 is vertically differentiated now, but what we've done is a little different from the presentation and the overview, is that we've added a different amount each time. So we haven't shifted the curve to the right the same amount for all the customers. Some customers will see a lot of value in pasteurization and others won't. And you can see that right here. So the first 2 customers buy product 1, but then the 3rd customer, just not enough additional value. Very little gap there between the standard product and the the commodity product, or so rather the pasteurized product and the original commodity product. So customer number 3 here will just buy the cheaper commodity product. When we look at the aggregate, we can see here a lot of customers are buying this new vertically integrated, vertically differentiated product, but because the cost is so high, profitability starts out at 0. Now that's going to change over time as the cost of pasteurization declines. So we're going to run that. Let's run that loop. And let's look at the results. So we have first iteration, iteration 0, iteration 1, iteration 2. And we can see the quantity actually never changes for product 1 or product 2. And the reason is because pasteurization provided an additional benefit to the customer right away. What's changing is the cost of providing that value. So the cost here is originally 1.2, then it goes down to 1.17, 1.14, and down, down, down. At the same time, profitability is increasing. So it goes from 0 to 200 to 400 to 600 to 800 and so forth. So profitability is increasing, but the value customers perceive is remaining the same. Now we can see that in our profit chart here. So this is the profit of product number 2. It's steady. The number of customers isn't changing. The profitability of product number 1 is increasing rapidly because we're driving down the cost of providing pasteurization. So what we're illustrating here is a little different to the overview presentation. We're saying that the leading companies that provided this pasteurization technology and were able to drive the cost down are far more profitable at the end of this, and that's part of the reason why they can drive these slower competitors out of the market. They're going to start buying more facilities. They're going to invest more in infrastructure. They're going to start their marketing campaigns, and they're going to drive these slower companies out of business. So that's the end of part 3. In part 4, we start looking at mass marketing. We start looking at the value that brands bring and how brands bring a new type of differentiation called horizontal differentiation.